Yeah, this works better. All right. Sing me a song, you're the piano man. Okay. All right, welcome to the it's the 2018 forum for the 2019 election. My name is Mike Coleman. I am an outgoing board member and current co-president of the 107ists, along with Sheba. We are here today to have a discussion with the candidates about issues related to the 107ists, which covers, of course, both Rose City Riveters and Timbers Army. I have a bunch of questions that have come in over email. Some have come from the board, some have come from other members. I have cards on the table. There will be an opportunity about halfway through to take a break. We're going to get some drinks, and we're going to we'll take more questions. So if stuff comes up in the first half that you want to get clarification on, be sure to submit a second question. Candidates are going to have about 2 minutes each. Lexi's got a timer to answer the questions. First question is actually a minute and a half, your intros, but the rest will be about 2 minutes. And we're going to do something in the middle that should be kind of fun. We're going to do the newlywed game, which is an opportunity for the candidates to answer questions all simultaneously on cards. This is designed specifically to avoid questions that the group could answer where we end up with a bunch of Me Too's. At least this way, it really is a unique thought versus, oh, I don't want to disagree with the group. Anyway, with that being stated, let's jump in, and I'd like each candidate, I guess we'll start with Josh because he has the microphone. Could you introduce yourself? Who are you? Who are you? What is an activity or project that you led or were a major contributor to with regard to the 107ists that you're most proud of from the past 12 months?
I think my name's Joshua. I think the project I'm most proud of working on this year, there's been so many, but I think it's probably being a part of Giselle Courier and working with the folks on there, helping guide Giselle Courier to what we're going for. Now it's an actual nonprofit starting to look at raising funds outside of just the 107ists with corporations, things like that, and seeing the money that's and the kids that are getting these funds and they're able to play. I think that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the thing I'm most proud of that I've done in the last 12 months.
Good morning, I'm Steph Nova. So this is going to sound kind of weird, but I do a lot of TIFO, I do a lot of shipping, but I work with really good crews on those things, so I honestly can't take credit for any of it. One interesting thing that we've dealt with in the North End is sexual harassment, finally dealing with it. I called someone out on Twitter, and a bunch of people that I don't even have positive interactions came to me to share their stories. And I was able to get all those stories together, talk to the front office, and call the front office out on their absolute inactivity on these things. I put them on their heels, and we made some changes as a result, which shows me that, okay, cool, I am good at interacting with the front office in a weird way. And that's going to be a big part of being on the board, is fighting for what we need, fighting for our own rights, and making sure that we are standing up for ourselves rather than getting pushed around. Dealing with things like them trying to take away GA, trying to switch up different things that are not good for the Timbers Army, and everything else. We are the strongest form of advertising that MLS has. And we need to stand up for ourselves, make sure that we keep on keeping on, because we're awesome at what we do. That doesn't need to change, and we do not need them getting in our way.
Hi, I'm Sheba Rawson. I'm co-president of the 107 Independent Supporters Trust and school principal by day. Reasons that I'm running, I think we have some really big challenges ahead of us that are exciting challenges, but there are still things that we need to be ready for. I talked about these online, but if you haven't seen those, we have the exciting challenge of having several thousand new folks coming into the stadium, season ticket holders. We have folks who are moving into the North End for the first time. We have folks who were in the North End going to other places in the stadium. We have places in the stadium that didn't have seats that will now have seats. All of that means that there's going to be an influx of several thousand people in the stadium who haven't been there before, or maybe they're in a new spot that they haven't been in. or maybe they haven't been coming regularly and now they will be. And we have an opportunity to reach out to those folks and help them to understand our mission, which is to be the greatest football supporters the world has ever seen. We are here to support soccer in and around Portland from the grassroots to the highest professional level, and we need to bring those folks in. So I'm very excited about that. We also need to work on our capital campaign so that we have a permanent home.
Can I direct you back to the question, which was, what is your accomplishment? Well, you're running out of time.
I'm getting there. Proudest game day ticket exchange. $12,500 to Operation Pitch Invasion every year. I'm just doing what you told me in the email, man.
That's what I told you just now.
Yeah, it's true. You sprung this on us 3 minutes ago. So, hi, I'm Maggie Williams. I have been a supporter of the Timbers since 2010 and of the Thorns since 2013, but most of that time has been from 2,000 plus miles away. I just moved back last year, so I've been watching and involved with 107ists from afar for many years, and then increasingly involved since I moved back last year. So I feel like before I moved back last year, you probably didn't see much of my involvement unless you were traveling, specifically on the East Coast, because that's where most of my work was taking place with game day ops and TIFO and communication and everything else. And I feel like from that time being far away and then moving back here and getting more involved kind of here on the ground, I have ideas and I have experience in kind of how things are running now and how they could potentially run better across the board, both here locally and far away. And so I want to be able to do more with communications and more with regional supporters groups and travel and kind of improve all of that moving forward. And so I think maybe the thing I was most proud of this year was probably among all of the away days that Drew and I worked on this year, I think probably Atlanta. And I think that's really paying off, especially this year, because now that we're going there for the Cup, it's the groundwork that we laid with their supporters group by being able to tailgate with them and everything means that they want us to tailgate with them now, which is ridiculous. It's that those kinds of relationships with other supporters groups across the country, I think, makes us stronger and soccer stronger.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Ingram. I'm running for the board because I've been doing your weekly newsletter every week without fail for the last 4 years. I've done it from Anchorage, from Reykjavik, from Paris, Copenhagen, my living room.
So you travel quite a bit.
Well, over 4 years, yeah. I'd like to thank the Academy for this opportunity. And in that, I took it over initially because I'm good with words. I'm an editor and a writer by trade. But what I learned over the 4 years is that this organization is so much more than what I thought it was. It's like, I joined the Timbers Army and like, oh, cool, there's a cool game day experience. It's a lot of fun. But I saw firsthand the cool things that we do for the community and how we give back and how people get involved and how just how much our people care about not just our team, but about our town and about our supporters groups and how our perception is in the greater community. So I really wanted to be a part of that. And I've been on nonprofit boards for 15 years, and I had taken a break for 6 months or so, and I was like, I kind of miss going to board meetings and being involved and giving back to the community. And so this opportunity, when I read the blog post on the website, I was like, okay, I can get behind that. It sounds like they need my skills. So here I am.
6 months, what a slacker.
I'm still involved in advisory committees and things like that. So don't think I'm completely not involved.
All right, so you're actually gonna have the first question, as it just worked out. It didn't work out that way because you were sitting there. It just worked out that way because it's in my notes. Right. What do you think, for Jen, what do you think are the top issues facing supporters groups in MLS? And as the largest supporter group in MLS, what is our responsibility in either advocating or championing these issues? You have 2 minutes.
I have to say I'm not super involved in supporter culture. I'm just learning about all this stuff. I've only been coming to Timbers games since 2011, but really only been really involved in the Timbers Army and supporters culture in the past probably year or two as I've taken over the newsletter and got more and more involved. So I'm not directly familiar with all the super pressing issues that are facing us right now. I do know that one of them is that there is a severe conversation going on about limiting our enthusiasm, as it were, at matches, because people do shit like throw stuff on the pitch during matches and the coaches have to walk over and say, hey, cut it out. That's not cool. And I definitely don't want to have the Timbers Army be seen as one of those groups that does that, or even the Riveters. So I would definitely want to make sure that people know that we are not that kind of organization, that we are here for our team, that we are here to give back to the community, and that we're going to fight for our supporters' rights. And what was the other part of the question?
It's just, as the largest SG in the group, do we have a special responsibility to advocate on behalf of other SGs? I guess that's another way of rephrasing the second part of the question. And what sort of issues would you step in on?
Yes, I think so, because I think that shows an overall camaraderie between all the supporters groups. It's not just about us; it's about supporters across the board. It's about supporters nationally. It's about supporters internationally. It's about and it goes straight back to the 107's mission. It's about promoting soccer from the grassroots to the international level. And it's about bringing respect to what we do. We're not just a bunch of soccer thugs in the North End drinking beer and waving scarves.
Thanks a lot. That's great. Appreciate it. Steph, we're going to head down to you. See, you could tell my questions were not ordered by the way they were sitting. Hey, in reading your forum posts, and I'm going to paraphrase you, and if I paraphrase you incorrectly, please push back.
Yeah, they've all been walls of text.
In your forum posts, I saw a few times where you replied to something to the effect of, I don't care if this is popular or not. Like, you stood by your opinion pretty aggressively. Is this approach conducive to reaching consensus and compromise, something as a board member you will need to do routinely?
It's something I could stand to work on, and I feel like a little bit of practice wouldn't be terrible. But I do feel like it is important to absolutely stay true to myself, stay steadfast with the mission that I think we have. And one thing that people need to realize, one person does not make all the decisions. One ego does not drive everything. The board has multiple people. We all need to work together, and we will all learn from each other through conversation. I've been to a few board meetings, and they are definitely not like love fests, which I appreciate. Girl. No, I absolutely appreciate that everyone brings something different to the table. We're not sitting there to change minds. We're there to work with each other. And yeah, you know, I could probably learn to put on kid gloves occasionally, but when it comes down to it, we need to stay true to who we are, and absolutely not necessarily change each other's minds, but definitely open up each other's eyes to what we are thinking, how we're feeling, and what we think that we could be doing better. The fact that the board has however many different perspectives is really important to us, really good to us, and absolutely makes us stronger. But yeah, to answer your question, I'll be honest, I've been drinking less. That's been helping. Been drinking less, been taking more lithium. It's a whole thing. It's a self-improvement process, and I'm definitely learning how to work with people, and I'm not kidding when I say those things.
You and I are on the same self-improvement process, so it's okay.
High five.
All right. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. Maggie, on the forums, there was a discussion about updates to travel pages. I didn't understand exactly what happened. So could you explain what was the project, or what was the goal, what happened, and then what did you learn from the experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically for the last, 3 years at least, we've been working on trying to get kind of away day guides completed, and then ideally then up on the website. And that was one of those things that I created the infrastructure to get those away day guides updated earlier this year, and that happened for some supporters groups and not for others, and it was really just those cities that were hosting away days this year, so it was definitely not complete. It was definitely not all of our regional supporters groups. It wasn't also Thorns matches. It was only the Timbers matches. It was not a complete process to begin with. There was an intention to get those up on the website. That hasn't happened yet, in no small part because that project is very much not complete. We don't have all of those guides. They don't all exist. And I wasn't sure that getting them partially updated was going to be as helpful. Those guides were being sent out to the people who were involved in actually going on those away days as it was, so that information was getting out there. They just didn't make it on the website yet. Lexi had reached out and had asked me to, a couple of times through Twitter DMs, which admittedly I'm not that good at keeping up with, but I'm trying to get better at, to try to get those up on the website, and just kind of fell through the cracks in terms of trying to get other away day things off the ground, because trying to get ticketing and trying to get people to get TiVos together and everything like that all kind of took priority every time there was an away day. So I definitely learned, keeping on top of those small details, and really it's trying to get that plan going far in advance. And Drew and I have already been working on various things that are going to help out with getting all of that off the ground early, especially because we have, 12 away days probably at the very beginning of the year. I'm sorry, Drew. I said I wouldn't mention it.
Front end loaded.
But so so we have a lot to do in getting that plan and making sure that that's really out there at the outset is, I think, going to help those things better moving forward. Yeah,
and I think that's, the point there that you talked about that's important is that as board members, you do have to sometimes prioritize one thing over the other. That's a very fair recognition. Josh, do you feel the work that you've done this far has been more tactical or more strategic? And do you think that that mix would change if you move to the board, and are you equipped to make that shift?
Am I equipped to make that shift? Yes, I think I am. I think for a large part of the work that I've done, it has been tactical. The last few years, I've been given more responsibility managing the warehouse, managing TIFO, head of the rigging crew, and I think that I've shown that I can adjust and look at that bigger picture. But yeah, a lot of it has been tactical. I think if you're going to be a board member, you have to be able to open yourself up. You have to be more strategic. So yeah, I think I can do that.
Sheba, finally, coming back around to number 5 there. So you've been our senior board member in terms of tenure, at least for the last 12 months, and then with me retiring, you'll still be the senior board member. I think, if I get this wrong, Stefanski, I apologize, but I think that you're the only board member now that we have served 2 complete terms all the way through. Stefanski's been in it for a partial term and a full term. Do you feel like that you have an additional responsibility based on that tenure, and how does that tenure shift your position on the board with relation to the other 10 people?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons that it's important for me to run is that with some of the things that are coming up, it's important to have both institutional memory and some strategic capability to be able to back up and look at things, from at a higher level. So, for example, I can't get caught up in minutia with community outreach as much as I love it. I'm not going to be able to do that as much. I'll go to meetings and I'll vote on things, but I'm pretty much going to have to hand off any coordination to somebody else because other things, in terms for the organization, are a priority. Things I already mentioned. So I think my responsibility is going to be to make sure that we're carrying forward things that are essential from our history, and also to look at things from a strategic level to be able to, again, fly the helicopter higher or whatever, just to be able to see all the pieces at once. So I think that's going to change what I do a little bit on the board. Some of the things I do won't, but some of the things, like I mentioned, will.
Will you still bake cookies for the fan laden?
I will still bake for the fan laden. I will still bake gluten-free and gluten as fuck.
Awesome. That is much appreciated by everybody who comes to the fan laden.
Awesome.
As are your nickel tours.
Yes, I do enjoy the 5-cent tours. And honestly, I know, as we joke about it, but that really is an important part of what we do.
Absolutely.
It brings people in.
Yep. I just said I make cookies also. Oh, we're going to have a bake-off. The Great Timbers Army Bake-Off Show coming to Netflix in 2020.
Yeah, I have been asked, wheedled, cajoled, begged to please set up a bake sale. So we'll see. We have a lot of time between now and our next home game, so that'll probably happen.
I dipped my toe into the holiday baking waters this year by creating some shortbread cookies for the first time. I do enjoy baking myself. All right, we're going to go back to Maggie with this question. This came in from outside sources. Do you feel the TA represents the diversity of Portland? What would you do, to raise the awareness of the TA in underrepresented communities? Sort of following on to something you said in your candidate statement, actually, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it does represent the diversity of Portland in that Portland is very white. So it's, the TA and 107S members kind of reflect that. Do I think we could be doing better about ensuring that we are trying to bring in diversity and those diverse voices and making them feel welcome? I think yes. I think the conversations that happened around the Sunshine Flag this year really showed that pretty starkly, because there were a lot of people who are from those underrepresented communities who spoke out and said, hey, I've always had a problem with this, but I didn't want to say something because how the conversation went was exactly what they feared was going to happen. And I think that's a problem. I think the fact that they were scared of that is a problem. I think the fact that exactly what they were scared of happened is a problem. And I think I don't totally know what the answer to that is because I'm not a diversity and inclusion expert. I know some people who are, and I think that bringing those voices in to talk to us at 107ers could probably help a lot and try to get a sense of, is there something better that we could be doing? But I think it's something that we should be thinking about going forward because I think the fact that we do look like Portland is, I mean, kind of a fact of life, but also not great. I think we could be more diverse than Portland.
Okay, and then just following, because what would you do? You mentioned bringing in diversity experts because that's kind of where you feel like the best information is going to come from. Is that
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because
cool, right on.
Because I think the board is very white. I don't know and none of us are diversity and inclusion experts. So I think if we can bring in someone who can say, try to increase this communication, do this better, like listen to voices, bring these voices in, I think it'd help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we did something similar with the sexual harassment earlier where we brought in experts in bystander intervention.
Yeah, and I think that it's already helping, and I think it's also something that we could continue to work on, and I think this is another avenue we could continue to work on. That's great.
Thank you. We're going to go to your left, to Jen. And I'm going to ask you, Jen, what is your familiarity, what is your synonym with the Independent Supporters Trust, the Independent Supporters Council, and how does the Timbers Army Rose City Riveters relationship work? So it's sort of like two questions. What do you know? Tell us about the ISC and tell us about the relationship between Timbers Army and Rose City Riveters, not RCR, but Rose City Riveters.
Do you mean like how the supporters groups milled in with ISC, or are these completely?
Yeah, just kind of like just tell us about it.
Okay.
Riff on it a little bit.
I'm too nice for that. You know that.
No, I didn't say rip. I said riff.
Oh, I thought you said riff on it. Like, just tear it down.
I'm not a fan of the ISC, but go ahead. You tell us about it.
I not super familiar with the ISC. I do know what they do. I know that they're sort of, for lack of a better term, an umbrella organization that a lot of the supporters groups can fall under to get support, to get guidance, to get ideas about how to form a formal supporters group. And they're, no more than that. I just totally lost my train of thought as I was talking about that. Like, it's in here. Anyway, so I do know that we are part of the Independent Supporters Trust and that it's a valuable asset for our organization. The second part of that, TA Riveters, I know that the TA and the 107ist are sort of intertwined inextricably because one was formed from the other. Like, we had the Timbers Army and we said, let's form a 107ist, let's do a nonprofit. And then when the Thorns started and the Riveters came on, it just made sense to fold them into the 107ist as a board for, efficiency, just logistically it made sense. I do know that the Riveters have their own steering committee, that they form their own ideas and organizations and things like that in there, but that also that we share things on the board like comms and travel and outreach. So that's my
no, that's good. No, I think that's great. That was a great answer. Joshua, do you prefer Joshua or do you prefer Josh?
Joshua, actually.
Okay, Joshua. I'll make a note of that. Hold on, I've got to get I'm gonna get my phone out.
Yeah.
So Joshua, lots of conflicts happen with the front office. Are you ready to stand up and say no to the front office? And when can you give me an example of when you would say no, and when you feel like we would have to maybe take the lesser end of a compromise?
Absolutely, I have no qualms about setting up to the FO when it comes to protecting our rights as supporters. I can definitely tell you something that's has happened in the past. I think it just came up recently. Is the front office kind of pushing a little bit towards taking certain sections away from the north end and making them reserved? That would be an absolute no on my part. I think on everybody's part. I think keeping that general admission is what keeps it's kind of the heart and soul of what we are in the North End for both supporters groups. Something that I might give a little bit more leeway on, even though I had kind of a confrontation with the camera crew a few matches ago, which got awkward, is probably some of the filming of the Timbers Army. I'm not comfortable with it. I don't like it, but I think there is maybe some give and take that can go on there. I think the camera on the log shooting the capos and the front stage is boring film for me, but I don't know why the camera's not turned around and looking at the game, but I understand why they're doing it. I think there's some give and take there, but yeah, those are two examples that I have.
So in that, you said you'd allow the camera on the log. What are some of the boundaries that you would shy away from? What's the compromise in what's the compromise in that camera position?
First, I'm not saying I would allow that.
Right, but
I wouldn't. I don't want that at all. But I think there is room for give and take on certain aspects of that. I don't know what that would look like. I'm almost out of time. I don't know what that would look like. I would have to see what the situation is before I can make a call. But yeah, I think that's one area where there might be some give and take.
Okay. Steph, how do you defend our anti-racist and/or pride displays, basically our inclusivity displays, to people that define inclusivity as a political stance?
Remember that thing I said about actually learning how to think before I speak? Anyone who thinks that inclusivity is political can just walk into the sea. Like, we have a large community of, liberal people, because Portland, and I'm so thrown off by the fact that anyone thinks that human rights are political. It's gross. I make a face at those people, and I'm very open about it. Does that answer the question?
So I'm going to push you a little bit, though. Do conservatives? You talked about being a liberal population. Do conservatives have a place in the North End?
If they're not dicks about it.
That's a fair and succinct answer. Are there areas? Are there? I'm gonna. How much time does she have left?
I love it.
Okay, you have a minute. You have a minute. I love. Look, we're of a like mind on this. But there are. I mean, there's some areas where. Are there areas where is there any room for compromise in that position?
No.
Okay.
Human rights are not political. Like, people are people. Like, yeah, we have to accept that some people think differently than we do and everything else. But when it comes down to it, as an organization, we are very adamant about human rights, acceptance, and everything else. So I don't really think there's room for compromise. I think we can talk to people a little bit about it, try to open up their eyes on not being horrible. But we should not change what we do.
Bravo. I don't think there's anybody in this room that disagrees with you, actually.
Ooh, validation. Thank you.
Sheba, how do you define supporter mentality?
I honestly have never considered that before. Supporter mentality.
It was literally sent to me as a question, so.
Okay. I'm going to have to take a second to think, because
that's fine.
I
Absolutely.
don't know that as a term. I guess if I have to just come up with something off the cuff, I'm thinking about what it means to be a supporter versus a fan. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. So, when we talk about being the greatest football supporters the world has ever seen, we're talking about something different from just showing up at a sporting event, drinking or not drinking, eating or not eating, cheering or not cheering. I've heard it sometimes referred to as a religion, and that the stadium is your church. I mean, we all come with common purpose. We share fellowship. We sing songs together. We share our sorrows together. We share our joys together. It's way more than simply being a sports fan.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, I appreciate that answer. Okay, so we have a couple of questions from the audience. I'm gonna actually save these for the second half because they don't fit in right here. We're gonna move into the newlywed game.
Oh crap! Okay.
We're changing
so-
things up.
okay,
You know what?
so-
You've got to be ready for change on the board.
Shall I turn off the microphone and set it down?
Yeah, we won't need the microphone for this. Well, you will because you guys are going to read your answers. Because people won't necessarily be able to see them. So these are up or down questions. There is one answer. It's the right answer. That being your answer. So there's no waffling. When I ask you for an opinion, there's one answer. This is a yes or no question. Do we do enough to communicate volunteer opportunities to membership? Yes or no? Yeah, well, I'll tell you guys when to turn around. If you're all done, just like kind of hold your card in front of you so we can't see your answer. And then we'll know that you're done. Steph, are you done? Okay, well, hold your card up like you're done. Okay, what's your answer? Do we do enough to So, Joshua, yes. Steph, yes. Sheba, no. No, yes. So, that's 2 points for Sheba? No, I'm just kidding. There's no points. Pick one of the three. Only one of the three, and I'm dead serious about this. Celebrate thanks. I just kick. I have big balls after mistakes. Thank you for that question, audience. Oh, you can open these up. Are you good? Sorry, bad throw. All right. That's fine. You can, if I can't read it, that's fine. I have really poor eyesight. Hold on, Joshua's not ready yet. Okay. All right. Ready on your 1, 2, 3. I just kick. I have big balls. I have big balls. Celebrate thanks and celebrate thanks. We're all winners here. Ladies and gentlemen, as you define it, I don't have a size of answer I'm looking for here. Like you'll understand, size doesn't matter in this answer. What is the yeah. Well played, Sheba. Well played. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to know, what is the most important thing the 107ist does? I am not fucking around. I know, we're going. Questions will get harder. And in conclusion, I know, I wrote buy pizza, but that's, yeah, you can write bakes. Everybody ready? What's everybody ready? Okay, let's turn around. I may not be able to read these, but go ahead and flip them around. And we'll go to this end. Jen, I can't read yours, I'm sorry. Outreach. Game day ops. Okay, yeah, sure. Across the board. Game day support for both teams. Yeah, sure. Support. What is that? Protect our rights as supporters. I like all those answers. Thanks. I think I wouldn't argue with any of that, of course. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, because my approval is so important. I will say I do have 4 107ist memberships, so there are 4 votes sitting right here. Let me explain that. My wife has one. I had to buy one for my brother and my nephew so they could buy tickets to LAFC away. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this question, again, I'm only going to accept one answer. Favorite TIFO of the year from either SG? Yeah, 2018, the past season. Not the calendar year, mind you, although the calendar year would just include last season right at this point. Because we're playing as late as we possibly can, ladies and gentlemen, in the Timbers Army. And we did for the Thorns as well. My favorite TIFO this year was Freddie. I know. Everybody got an answer? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the fun part of the forum. All right, you got it? Are we still waiting on Nova? Or she's good? Okay. Okay, what do you say? What do you got there, Joshua? Pennywise. Pennywise. You'll float too. Pennywise. Pennywise. And? Pennywise. Which actually won Tifo of the Year, so those answers were all a cop-out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, pens ready? What is the least important thing the 107ist does? Otherwise read as, if you have to bring down the hammer and axe one thing, what is it? Yeah, the newlywed game at the candidate forum is a valid answer. No, it's not, because everybody else has already written answers down. I can't give you answers. And yes, this is a Solomon's baby kind of question. It really is intended to be. So if you're struggling with it, that's acceptable, obviously. But the genesis of this question is that if we faced a budget shortcut, or if we faced an exodus of membership or something, what would we have to cut? Like, just to, the being on the board is about setting and priorities, and sometimes you have to not do things. So that I'm not trying to be a hard ass. I think it genuinely is rooted in what we do as the board. So if you want to revise your answers, if you're good, you're good. Joshua, do you have an answer? Joshua, 10 seconds, please. Dun, 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 dun. Didn't somebody play the Jeopardy theme one year at the forum? I think they did. Ready? Okay, I'm going to give you the time it takes for these four women to read their answers. We'll start with Jen. Okay. Okay. 10, 9, 8, 5, 3. Okay, Jen. Least important thing that 107 is. What is it? The party? The block party? Oh, the parties. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Yep. Okay, fine. Maggie? Block party, okay. Membership discounts for businesses? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Steph? Nike Pass. Well, it doesn't cost a thing, but we do have to work with Nike. There are dozens of hours that go into the Nike Pass, right? Sorry, there's no editorializing. Paying for Seattle buses. Oh. Bold move, Cotton. I hope it works out for him. The beer's all donated. Yeah, that's a good idea. Put a keg in the back of a car. Just drink this on the way up. We'll be fine. What could possibly happen? All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have a gavel, but I'm banging my water bottle. Okay. Unacceptable answers to this question are volunteer engagement and capital campaign. Outside of those two things, which we all acknowledge as being important issues, what is the biggest threat to the future of the 107ist or the Timbers Army and or the Riveters SG? Yeah, I'll say it again. Outside of volunteer engagement and the capital campaign or the need to find a permanent space, what is the biggest threat to the 107ist / Timbers Army / Rose City Riveters? Is everybody ready? Jen's still writing. I have another pen up here if you need it. Or actually, Joshua has an extra pen if you need it. Yes, I only have one eye left. I'd appreciate not throwing projectiles at me. Never gets old. Hashtag never gets old. All right, are we ready? Joshua, what is our biggest threat?
The gulf between FOs, MLS, and supporters.
Okay. MLS is our biggest threat. What kind of incompetence? Okay, basically league incompetence. Yeah, perfect. Good answer. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Losing the GA section and the same vein. Yeah. The front office, the league. Yep. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, again, there's only one acceptable answer, and I told you the questions are going to get harder. What is your favorite pair of shoes? Mine are prime knit gazelles that I'm wearing right now. Sorry. If you don't like gazelles, I don't know. I just don't know if I can talk to you anymore. Yeah, that's a blessing. All of a sudden, everybody's burning their gazelles. I think, Joshua, you're wearing gazelles. Yeah, there you go. All right, Joshua, gazelles. Remember, I have 4 votes. What do you have? Doc Martens, nice. Your Docs, sure, of course. Your son's old, those are your son's old Sambas? I can't. My sons can't wear my shoes. I wear a 7.5. Anyway. I'm not wearing them right now because I have game day Converses for both the Timbers and Thorns, and I couldn't wear both. Awesome. One on each foot, maybe. I don't know. I thought about it. It would have fit in right now, though, but it's true. Your Chucks. I love my Chucks. All right. All right. Nice. Okay, this is going to be the last question, and this question is actually going to it's a long build-up, so please listen. And it's a serious. I mean, there've been some fun questions. There've been some serious questions. So we're back to a serious question. While the Rose City Rivers have rolled many of their operational tasks under the 107th for the sake of efficiency, they maintain a distinct cultural identity and steering committee. Meanwhile, the 107th grew out of the Timbers Army and only later was reimagined as the organization under which both the TA and Riveters exist. As a result, 107th business and TA businesses are frequently one and the same. Are the 107 acts as the de facto steering committee for the TA. Does the TA need its own steering committee, yes or no? Three letters or 2? No, you write yes or no. All right, it looks like everybody's done. Okay, we will start in the middle with Sheba. No. Steph. Please do not editorialize. Maggie. Yes. Jen. Yes. Joshua. Yes. And we will revisit that topic. All right, we're going to take our break. It's 11:25. We're going to take our break about 5 minutes early. Why don't we take? You guys want 15 or 20 minutes? 17.5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 42 after the hour. Please visit the bar and support the great theater here. And especially, let's give it up right now for Artist Rep for hosting us again this year. They have a great season of plays. They're doing a radio version of that movie where the guy loses everything and the angel loses its wings, whatever that is. Wonderful Life. So go see it. Yeah, and write down more questions. If there's anything that you heard in here that you want explanations on, write them down and give me the cards. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for The Quiet Storm, tonight on 96.7 Pure Jazz Portland. We're going to start out with a little George Benson. Get that mood set. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna. I mentioned this to all the candidates. The last question was an interesting one. It was four people said yes, one person said no. I would like to start with, I don't know, Josh would start. Josh, why do we need, Joshua, sorry. Big J. All right, let's go.
I'm fine with that.
That's what his students call him. No, okay, so seriously, let's back to the thing. Why do you feel like, what is the benefit of a Timbers Army steering committee?
Well, going to board meetings over the last few years, 6 of them this year, reading through the notes, I think that the 107th has done a good job managing both the umbrella and focusing on the Timbers Army. I'm not, by saying yes, I'm not saying that that they haven't done a good job. I think that what I have noticed is that there is a lot on board members' plates. In my experience, especially the last year and a half, working more closely with some board-related activities, things don't get attended to in a timely manner. Things are getting missed. And it's not the board's fault necessarily. It's the fact that there are so many different pies that they are managing or trying to bake, or cookies, or whatever. There's a lot going on. I think pulling some of that away, I don't know how the Riveters exactly have it structured, but what I've seen over the last year attending the board meetings, I like the liaison factor of it. Kind of set any business, say any business that needs to be taken care of, and it's a short amount of time, and the board is able to move on to other projects. So I think from the outside looking in at board meetings and reading notes and experiencing some things where stuff's getting missed or dropped, I think pulling some things away from TA game day ops and things like that away from the responsibility of a board member allows them to restructure their time and put it into things that I think the board should be focusing more on.
Okay. And then Sheba, I'll give you a shot. But just for the other three who said yes, is there anything that Joshua said that is there anything that you would add to what Joshua said as reasons to have the steering committee?
So I mean, my yes was a little more qualified, but I think that basically, if we're going to have a Riveter steering committee, then I think it makes sense to have a more parallel structure and kind of run all like the TA and the Riveters in a similar way. I think that basically there needs to be a further discussion, and I think it needs to be a discussion with people who deal with the Riveters who are on that steering committee and people who deal with the Riveters who aren't on the steering committee, and kind of discuss whether that structure still makes sense. And I think if that structure does make sense, then I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that, and we should discuss whether or not the Timbers Army should also have a steering committee or not. I feel like I don't necessarily have enough information to say yes for sure. I think that there's a lot of people who have dealt with the Timbers Army and the Riveters in each of their current structures, and whether or not that's like the kind of non-parallel structure that we currently have really makes sense going forward is something that should be re-brought up in a larger conversation with a lot of people.
So I'm gonna just to clarify a little bit on what you were saying. So you could see a world then where we either fold the Riveter steering committee into the 107ist, or we form a Timbers Army steering committee so that you just basically have parity in organizational structure.
I think, yeah, I would be more surprised if the Riveters were to get folded in, because I think kind of a lot of how that's run, it would be a little hard to necessarily fold it all in, and it would potentially require, a bigger board or like some better way to make sure that the stuff isn't falling through the cracks, like Josh mentioned, where it's like, Joshua mentioned, where it's like, because it is like the board takes on a lot. So like, do we need more board members if we're going to do that? Is it that we're going to have a really committed like committee structure that oversees that? I think like no matter what ends up happening, if there's going to be a change, it's going to require a big discussion and a lot of planning to figure out how this is going to work and make sure that we have a good project plan going forward for it. Sure. But I think it's something the Riveters have been around for 6 years now, and I think the way that the steering committee came about was in a small part because it was, trying to get off the ground, and now that it's been around for 6 years, I think it's time to revisit.
Okay, cool. What's that? Okay, that's fair. Okay. Sheba, you had a no card, if you want to qualify kind of what you were thinking there.
Sure. So when the Riveters first became who they were, the steering committee was necessary because they had all kinds of things they had to get off the ground. Everything from what their game day was going to look like to what kind of merchandise they were going to have. All those kinds of things were coming from ground zero, and so it made sense that they had a separate structure for that. What I see is that some things do indeed come under the aegis of the 107ist. So, for example, we work together on travel more. We work together on community outreach all the time. There's lots of stuff we work together on, and then there's some stuff that's going to remain separate. While I'm not intimately involved with the steering committee. I've been hanging out in the Fun Land and doing work sometimes when they're meeting. And so I see that a lot of the work that they're doing is not unlike the work that happens within the 107ist for the Timbers Army. It's just that they're smaller because they're newer. So I see that they work on communications, that they work on game day ops, they work on TIFO. They have structures for those things. It's just, again, a smaller number of people because younger group. What I would expect to happen is I would expect to see those things that are logically put together to continue to come together under 107ist, like working together more on travel, like working together more on outreach. And then some things logically staying separate, in particular those things where the culture of the supporter group lives. And I think the culture of the supporter group lives in TIFO, I think it lives in merch, I think it lives in game day operations. And I think those things are true for Timbers Army as much as they are for Riveters. But you know what, we already have those things. And I don't want a steering committee to tell merch what to do or a steering committee to tell TIFO what to do. They're doing great stuff, and I want to leave them the hell alone, and I want them to keep doing those things, and I want to pull together the things that make sense for us to work together on. So some stuff is always going to be separate. Some stuff is going to work more towards the same spot.
So I'm a little confused. So why does the structure that worked for the Riveters why would that not work for the Timbers Army?
What I'm expecting is that I expect the Riveters, this is my guess, I expect the Riveters to evolve into something that looks a lot more like what's happened with the Timbers Army. So I expect that stuff that is happening at a steering committee level eventually is going to be happening at a full-blown committee level. And so I would see more of the work that a small group is doing is going to be a larger group of people, and they'll have groups like a merch team that's robust, that's doing its stuff on its own and is going to continue to do its stuff on its own, doesn't necessarily have to go through a steering committee. See what I'm saying? Okay. So that's the evolution I expect. I could be wrong. But right at this point, I don't see a need for a steering committee for Timbers Army for stuff that is already happening.
Okay. And by the way, in this section, if candidates have questions for candidates or they want to add, if we could just try to stay away from I agree with statements, but definitely if you have questions that you want to ask other candidates, feel free to do it. So Steph, you said yes. How do you see? And Sheba said, that it feels like the structure is correct right now. If you were architecting a Timbers Army steering committee, what would that look like, and how would it relate to the 107ist?
So one thing that I think the 107ist board has been largely Timbers Army focused. One of my big things in 2016 was aggressively calling out Riveters to get involved, and it made me unpopular, which I already was, but it worked. There are more volunteers, there are more people stepping up, and there are more people doing things. There are more new designers and everything else, whereas the 107ist, the board has always been very diverse in what I'm getting ahead of myself on that, in what they focus on. And so everything is already very well represented. I think a steering committee could be a good thing in the future, but right now it ain't broke, so why fix it? But if we do get a steering committee going, yeah, it could be cool to be able to put more focus on specific things, like a specific TIFO liaison, a specific match day operations liaison, all those different things. So I feel like there are ups and downs, but for right now, I feel like the Timbers Army is doing a really solid job of doing that. And admittedly, I do not know much about the Riveter Steering Committee because, and I'm not trying to be horrible when I say this, but it has been said that people are generally sort of shielded from what's done there. So I'm not actually sure how the Riveter Steering Committee runs, and as a result, I can't, what they're doing works as far as I know, but because I don't know what they do, I don't know what a Timbers Army Steering Committee would look like.
Okay, that's totally fair.
So it's me needing to learn how to do more things and figure stuff out and talk to more people.
I just want to address something that Joshua said and also what Steph said, which is, we're doing a lot of things, right? And we can definitely, as an organization, do a better job of organizing ourselves to get those things done. I kind of want to channel Josh Barrett and say, are we a strategic board? Are we a working board? We are evolving and maturing as an organization, and it is not at all surprising that we're going to be having to put more of the actual day-to-day work somewhere else and have board members having oversight. But I don't think that necessarily requires a steering committee. So, for example, if we have people on the board who are operating at a more strategic level, looking at planning and that sort of thing, and then coming to talk to people who are doing TIFO rather than actually being the people who are doing the TIFO, that's okay. But it doesn't, I don't think it necessarily means we need to have a whole separate committee for that, if that makes sense.
Okay, last little bit. We'll give everybody, go ahead and add like 30 seconds if you have it, and then we'll give everybody else a chance if there's anything they want to add.
So one thing that I feel is really important as far as the board goes and stuff like that, I do not think that the board should have oversight over merch or match day operations. I think it's important to have a liaison to the board, but when it comes down to it, let merch live. Let match day operations live. They need to be able to handle their own things and just sort of come to the board, but Sheba agrees.
Does that include financial oversight?
Yeah. That's the thing. I'm not a money person. I manage a trucking company by day, and I do a massive amount of logistics and herding a lot of cats. But I've got an accountant, so you know I desperately need to learn more about finances, how those things work, and everything else. And I put that on the forum for sure. I'm aware of my own limitations, and I'm super excited about being less limited when I learn more.
All right. Anybody want to add anything to this discussion? I was going to kind of hold it to about 10 minutes. We've done about 12, but if yeah, sure, absolutely.
Having served on a lot of boards, I understand, like, I don't know if steering committee is really the word that I'm looking for this, but I do think that a lot of the day-to-day things that you guys as a board are dealing with could get sent to a committee, like to deal with this kind of stuff, so that you're not spending 3 hours at a board meeting going over and over and over and over and discussing things ad nauseum, when you could have a committee come to you and say, here's some of the things that have come up in the North End in the past month. Here's what we advise dealing with them, putting out a statement or whatever. What do you guys think? That would just completely efficientize your meetings. That's all.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'm going to go back. We're going to go back to some. These are all I haven't done this moderation before, but I was shocked at the number of questions that were on the table when I came back. So thank you, audience, for that. That's great.
Find out.
You will find out if that's a good thing or a bad thing right now. Sheba.
Hi.
Does the Timbers Army have an entitlement problem? I did not write that question.
I'm not quite sure what that means.
Does Timbers Army have an issue with entitlement? That's the question.
Given that if you want to be Timbers Army, you already are, that's a pretty large, that's a broad brushstroke. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough without more context.
Anybody else want to answer that question? Steph.
People want to be handed things rather than working for them. People demand that they have other people work for them rather than doing their own damn legwork. We need to figure out a way to change that. We need to figure out how to inspire people. I harangue people into doing things, and it actually works pretty decently, but I could find a softer and more gentle way to do that. So that's my answer.
Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? And not to say I agree with Steph or I agree with Sheba, but to add something to it.
Can I say I agree with Steph and Sheba?
You can explain that, sure.
No, an entitlement problem, that is a really broad stroke. There are definitely entitled people in the Timbers Army. I think it's the same with any group, but I don't necessarily see it as a problem. If that's the as an organization, I don't know if that's answering the question that they wanted. So, but
if I paraphrase you incorrectly, let me know. You don't think it's endemic, that entitlement is endemic to our DNA?
No.
Can I expand on it?
You have 5 seconds.
Son of a bitch. From when I start talking. People need to ask for things rather than expecting them to happen automatically. The board doesn't automatically know what needs done. People need to communicate on what they need, like RSG's expecting people to know that they exist. They need to, people need to advocate for themselves and then start making things work rather than assuming that the board is just there to serve them.
Sure.
We're mission-driven, not member-driven.
Okay, fair. I'm going to go to Maggie on this one. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to Jen. I actually have a question for you from the audience, specifically to you.
Psych.
Okay, so for context, for those of you who haven't followed it, travel, and Lexi, Gabby, if I miss something important, please let me know. When traveling to Seattle for matches, the Riveters are severely restricted on the way they can support. They can't, there's no obscenity, there's no drums. Do you get flags? No flags. I got two of the limitations. I'm sorry, what? There's no what? Okay, there's no ADA. So it's a suboptimal experience in Seattle, to put it lightly. So 2 questions, and they both with that as the background. How do we deal with that specifically? Was it right for the Riveters to agree to a no swearing, a concession we would never make to our own front office to get token, quote unquote, token noisemakers, unquote? And given the problems the Riveters have had with the Reigns front office, what do you think about not doing organized travel? So should we have made a concession, and is a nuclear option such as not traveling called for in this situation?
Was that for me? Okay. Well, you said Maggie first, and I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Wow. I think it's important to support our teams no matter what concessions are put upon us. I think that the supporters help the team succeed. They know that we're there for them, and I think the fact that we are limited is definitely something we would have to fight against, but I don't think that we shouldn't go because of those things, because our teams need us.
Is there ever a situation where you would advocate for, in either the Timbers Army or the Rose City Rivers, would you ever advocate for, I consider a nuclear option, withholding support for a match? So a match where the Timbers Army sits for 90 minutes or the Riveters sit for 90 minutes. Could you ever see us doing that?
Yes, I mean, if they severely limited what we could do that strictly, then I could see probably just boycotting the thing. It would be hard, I think. I think it would be really hard.
Okay.
And I think that the front office would have an issue with that as well, just not being able to support the teams and knowing that we are that limited.
Do you care that the front office has an issue with that?
Yes, because they could advocate for us, perhaps, against the other donors, the front office of the other team, and say, look, you know, this is really important for our teams, and it's really important for our supporters groups. Can we come to some kind of consensus about this other than you can't do anything?
Okay. All right, great. I'm going to move on.
Can I give a little context on that?
Sure.
Sure.
Everybody should answer that question if they have something additional to add.
Yeah,
if you
so
don't have anything to add, then we assume you totally agree with what Jen said.
Yeah, so I do totally agree with what Jen said. I do want to add some context to that, in that that's not the only stadium where we have those restrictions. The Timbers away at NYCFC, we can't swear, which, by the way, is really fucking hard. We have to earmuff people. Like, we've had to do that 2 times already. We can have drums. We didn't have drums in Atlanta. Like, this happens in a lot of stadiums across the country. And while I think it's especially egregious when it's Seattle, because that's, like, kind of our closest people, and also there's a lot of other problems with that stadium, and that, it's kind of a third world stadium to begin with. But like, these are restrictions that we run into a lot of places, and it's not just the Seattle Reign that have that issue. And I do think that's something that we need to fight against, but I just, want to give context that we've kind of not had an issue. Like, it's happened before.
So in the vein of not just restating problems, right? Acknowledge that we have that problem in Atlanta, in MLS, and NYCFC, and maybe other stadiums in NWSL. What do we do about it?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is that, like, it's definitely a problem with Seattle Reign, but it's a wider problem that we need to figure out how to handle. And whatever strategy that we come up with in order to fight against that is going to have to be, like, kind of probably brought to the ISC. It's like, we need to get more people involved, because it's also not just us dealing with those restrictions.
But you're not. So answer the question, which is, you have been charged with drafting the reaction to this problem. What is, just off the top of your head, what would you draft as a plan of action? Like, what is the action you would take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hard. I don't think that the answer is not supporting our boys and girls on the field. So I would be hard pressed to say we should just not go, because I think that's kind of, I think that's hurting more than just like it's making a statement, but I think it's also hurting our support, and I don't think that's the way to go.
What else? Sorry to interrupt, but like,
yeah, no, please.
What else do we have? Like, what other level? So I'm hard pressed myself to think of anything other than a support boycott, especially away. So what other lever do we have?
Yeah, but I think that's an important lever, but I just think that lever is going to make more, it's going to have a bigger impact in some places than others. Because I do think it would make an impact if we did that at Seattle Rain, but I don't think it's going to make an impact if we do it at NYCFC. So,
okay,
yeah,
sure.
Because like, I just don't think they care if if we've got a bunch of people coming from across the country. I don't think it's going to make an impact to them. So I think we're going to have to draft a strategy. It's going to have to.
Would you do the protest at home, where it would have an impact?
A protest? How? Sorry.
Would you protest?
So like when NYCFC comes
or any match, would you just say, hey, Portland Timbers front office, if you don't get this shit sorted out, we're not supporting in Portland. So until you get on the phone with the league, the owners in the league or whatever, and get a mandated policy, we're sitting down at home.
Yeah, I think that would be probably the most effective thing we could do. And I do think pushing on our own front office is probably going to be one of the most effective ways to go, because they have leverage across other front offices, and it is a league-wide problem across both leagues.
I think, yeah, Steph, sure. And Josh, if you've got something after Steph talks, real quick.
The Reign have the unfortunate luck of playing in a high school stadium, which is very small. You guys could organize your own thing and get reserved seats all throughout the stadium, chant your asses off, and drown out the Reign support, because they have multiple supporters groups, because they're driven by ego rather than support. Spread yourselves out, make yourselves loud. The security there is anemic as hell. They're going to have to drag you out one by one, which they are not going to be able to do.
So you're basically advocating for civil disobedience.
And? Sorry, I know. I have the reputation of being a Reign supporter. Feel free to ask me about that in person so I can tell you the backstory, and also no. But when it comes down to it, like, yeah, I exploded on the leader of the Royal Guard. I basically pointed over at the north end and said, do you think all those people like each other? Because they don't, but they're working together because they are here to support the team rather than support their own egos. Also, why are you wearing an ECS vest?
All right. All right. Josh, anything to add to that? Joshua?
I'm not sure I have anything else to add after what Maggie and Steph said. The one other thing I think I would add is I think it's important to make sure that we're including the Independent Supporters Council and making sure that they're involved with the front offices. I also think in those situations, as Maggie mentioned, NYCFC,
just say Manchester City, New York.
Right. It's important, and I can't speak necessarily with the relationship that the supporters groups between Seattle and we have in the women's league, but it's important to work. I think at that point it's important to work also with the other supporters groups, because I think that's where you're going to get some additional power, additional voices complaining about this. I don't know if they are or not. I've seen some things that were retweeted. I know that some were, but others were, I don't know, I think she got kicked out of it because of it. I don't know. But I think it's important to engage the supporters groups as well.
All right, thanks. And we're going to move on now. You know what? Anybody want another round of match game or a newlywed game? All right, short newlywed game. We'll get to them. I want people to have a break.
I have a game at 4, Mike.
Game's over. This will be over 12:30. New starts.
Prioritize. What are your priorities?
You guys good? Okay. Oh, we're reducing, recycling, reusing? Just like we do with our TIFO?
Yes, we're reusing our TIFO right now.
Is the Timbers, is the 107th board a working board or a strategic board? Josh Barrett's not here, but we had to ask the question. The last two questions actually come from the audience. That one didn't. That's just an inside joke. Real quick, 1, 2, 3, working or strategic? All right, Sheba, what do you got?
Currently working, moving forward, and should be.
Jen says the same thing. Maggie, what do you say? Yeah. Strategic, interesting. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, these last two did come from the audience, so these actually are audience questions. I need you to list for me your favorite Thorns match.
Oh, are we writing it?
Yes. Because that keeps somebody from cribbing someone else's answer. 10 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. And was it intended to be ever? I don't know who wrote the question. I paraphrased it. So let's just say ever. You have the full history of the Thorns upon which to draw. Okay, Jen, your favorite Thorns match ever?
I'm going to say this final just because it was a great day, wonderful day, and the team was really united, and what the Riveters did for it was just fantastic energy.
Sure, fair.
Chicago away this year was a doubleheader when there ended up being like 20 of us in the crowd, and Wayne sang us "Let's Be Good."
And wasn't it like 30 degrees? It was like, it was so cold, right? I remember that about that. I wasn't there for either match, but I remember that about that. What do you got? What's that? The playoff before? The semifinal this year? That was a good game, yeah. What?
Playoff 2018, straight fire.
Yep. Joshua.
I don't go to the game very often, but the game the goalie scored.
Oh, the Betos header. Yeah.
That was anytime a goalie scores, it's a good day.
This one, the way it was written is, it says on the card, one word answer, sunshine banner, stay, go. One word answer, and I think by that they mean the sunshine flag. One word answer, sunshine banner, stay or go. At home, the sunshine, the one that gets lifted over 107. The flag. The BAF, stay or go. Stay or I didn't write the question, I'm reading it. You stay or go. Okay, answer, sorry. Go. Stay.
Stay. I'll expand on the form.
Stay. Go. Go. Yeah, I can't see it. Stay. Okay. So we're going to go right out of that into another question, and this one was from the audience, and it was addressed specifically to Maggie. So I'm going to read it as it's written. Maggie, you mentioned the importance of listening to minority members, but you're ignoring the voices of many Asian Pacific Islander members who were livid that we pulled the flags. How will you ensure that white guilt doesn't get in the way of actually listening?
I started fighting on Twitter about this many months ago because I was listening to one of my Asian American friends who was the one who said that she had never brought it up over years because she was worried that the conversation was going to go exactly as it went. I think, like, I was listening to those voices. I think there are other voices. I didn't really hear those voices. Like, I didn't see them on Twitter. I didn't get any messages about it, about saying livid, that they were livid that it was leaving. I saw a lot of people who were very mad that it was staying, and that was our own supporters. That was the supporters of LAFC. I mean, yeah, there are voices on both sides, but none of what I was fighting about was driven by white guilt. It was reading up on it, reading up on the history, and listening to people who said that it was a problem.
Okay, but so the actual question is, how will you ensure that white guilt doesn't get in the way of actually listening? So what I heard you say is you were hearing opinions. Did you go out and try to find countering opinions to that? Did you actively engage in that process?
Yeah, I talked to as many people as I could, and
Okay.
I didn't hear countering opinions.
Okay.
So
you went looking,
think,
you didn't find it.
Yeah.
Okay. Are in a situation like that, how do you deal with? Let's assume that you did go find some people, because I actually had a couple people tell me they were API and they thought the whole discussion was silly.
Yeah.
What do,
oh,
what do you-
I heard some of that. I didn't hear people who were mad that we took it down. I heard people who thought it wasn't.
Okay,
as big a deal.
so how do you position somebody who says, look, there's nothing wrong with the BAF. I'm Asian Pacific, I'm Taiwanese, or whatever, one of the impacted areas. And I don't know all the history. I mean, I read the stuff that was posted, but let's just assume that they were affected. Their family was affected. They're saying, no, leave the flag up. I'm over it. How do you juxtapose that against someone who says, my family was affected and I'm not over it?
I think we need to prioritize the people who are affected. And so if they say this is a problem, then I think we need to listen to them. And if there's some who say it's not a problem, then they're going to be fine with it if it stays or goes. But there are people who are going to have a problem with it if it stays. And I think that's who we should be listening to.
No,
ultimately.
but the people I talked to had problems that it went. They thought that it's damaging, and they went back on my least favorite argument of all times. I don't agree with this phrase, but it's the slippery slope argument.
Sure.
And so at what point do you reach a tipping point between the people that are affected and the people who are not affected, and that are in the same population? And is there a tipping point there? Right? Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah. No,
I think that's the gist of the question.
Yeah, and I think it's that there's not always going to be a right answer, and there's not always the answer for this one is not necessarily going to be the answer for the next time something like this might come up. I think it's that we're going to have to continue listening and continue seeking those people out and weighing those different opinions and weighing, in this case, I feel like a lot of the arguments that I saw were, well, most of the people arguing were white, which is, an issue in and of itself. But I think a lot of them were saying, no, we can't take it down. This is tradition.
Right.
Or this means a lot to me. But they're not the people who it was.
Yeah, I'm not getting into.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it's just this issue is not going to be the next issue. If there's a next issue, it's not going to be like this, and we're going to have different voices, and we're going to have to make sure that we weigh those accordingly. And I can't answer how it's going to go next time because I don't know what the next one's going to be. But I think just making sure that we seek out all of those voices and figure out, is the way that these people are being affected, is that more important than these couple of people who are saying, no, we should keep it up? I don't know. I think in this case it was, but I don't know about the future.
That's fair. I think, yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's go here. I think I'm going to give this one to Steph. And I'm gonna provide additional background that's not on the card because I think it's important to be able to answer the question accurately, or for everybody to understand the breadth of the question. And if I get this wrong, Lexi or Gabby, you guys let me know. Right. So currently, the 107th budget it takes income sources from there's really three major income sources. There's sort of ad hoc random donations and donations that come in through explicit charity fundraisers, like a block party is supposed to be a fundraiser when you get the AV sorted early enough. The block party is. There's other ones. Then there's, of course, our membership dollars, which represent membership dollars probably represent about 45% of the income. No Pity Originals merch is a big chunk. And then there's these ad hoc donations. And you add those things up, the two big chunks are the membership dollars and the merch. No Pity Originals is included in the 107th general budget. It goes into the general budget, of which we pay for everything that you see us do. The Riveters, right, their merch is maintained in a separate account. It doesn't go into the 107th general fund and it kind of funds their activities. If it funds their TIFO and funds some specific charitable giving that you guys do. A bit of I'm just the question is, should how the Riveters be contributing dollars directly to the 107th fund?
Absolutely. If they're going to use 107ist resources, they need to pay in on 107ist resources. It's rad that you guys have your own charity efforts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if y'all going to use the warehouse, you need to start paying for the warehouse. I think the question's flawed, but yes. But that's my answer.
Well, I want to, at the sake of editorializing, I think we also have to. I think one of the areas that we didn't cover is that when you have 107ist general funds, you have membership dollars coming in that are both Timbers Army and Rose City Riveters, right? And our percentages show that at least 35%, probably higher at this point, last time I looked it was about 35%, self-identified as both Timbers Army and Rose City Riveters. So you could make an argument that of that $100,000, $36,000 coming in can be tied back to the Riveters. The operational cost of the warehouse and the shared infrastructure, at least the lease payment, is about $36,000. So you could argue that through those membership dollars, the Riveters are directly contributing to those costs already. So how would you respond to that?
I reiterate, I'm not a finances person. I'm learning as I go. But if everyone's going to be a 107ist, we need a single fund. I don't understand why the Riveters have their own separate thing. And I honestly, if you guys want to educate me on that, I'm listening.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, I mean, I think that's a very fair response. Do you have any follow-up questions? Okay, all right. I'm just reading it as it was written on the card, and I didn't write it.
Talk to both of us, hell.
Jen. I think Jen is probably due one. I got one for Josh. Everybody knows what it is.
I had one a few minutes ago.
What would your solution be to solve the toxic nature that has become ingrained in line culture? Don't at me. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Are we talking just the toxic culture and the toxic in line culture, or just in TA in general? Because I think it's
this question was specific. What would your
the way.
solution be
Just line
to solve the
culture.
toxic nature that has become ingrained in line culture? Don't at me.
I am not familiar with what's going on in line culture. I haven't participated.
It's toxic.
Well, apparently. I don't know. I don't.
Okay,
have
let me try to. I obviously
give me some
don't
background.
participate in line culture because I go in generally early to do game day stuff. But there's a lot of folks, and if line culture people, if I don't characterize your problems correctly, just shout at me, but one at a time, please. There's a crush that happens. One person will hold a spot, and 15 people will try to crowd into that spot.
Okay, that happens a lot.
That sort of thing. I mean, is that the biggest issue? I don't know. Let's pretend that's the biggest issue.
Sure.
And I think this was very apparent with the final. You know, there was a lot of people who were already, there was already 600 people in line. So when you have, one person, and it's not just one person doing it, right? There's a whole load of people doing it, and they all have 15 people joining the line. Pretty soon the people
Right. The front.
Okay.
It's like suddenly you go from like being number 100 in line to, oh fuck, how did I not get this?
Okay, So it's basically that crush. The problem is with the
Right.
crush, so for history, because Sheba and I worked on this, the history on this is that we originally put the line
No,
culture.
I know about this part.
Okay.
I'm not going to interrupt you. I just
Go.
Shiva's
Do it.
Just answer the question.
Do it.
I do know that back in the old days, we did the wristbands ourselves, and there was still that problem. People would show up at the last minute and be like, "Oh, now that we went from 2 to 8 in front of me," and therefore the front office helped us out and said, "Now we're going to hand out numbered wristbands, and y'all are going to line up." But still, you get people showing up 2 minutes before wristbands open. I don't know what the solution is for that.
Would you advocate doing random wristband numbers?
I think that could be helpful. Yeah, I think that we're always gonna have people who are gonna show up at the last minute. It's just the way people operate. I think one thing that could help is just calling people out on it and be like, dude, bro, like I've been waiting in line. Like we don't do this at grocery stores or any other place.
I'm sorry, I have to go. I was just told we have an absolute hard stop at 12:30. So
okay. Yeah, that's some weird.
So I can't take follow-up on that because I want to make sure you guys have a time for your closing statements, which, Joshua, you're going to have to explain to people on the forum what you meant about Seattle buses because that was the question for you. And then we had an up or down question. You just do, we're going to do the Roman thing. The Roman thing is on the count of 3, is the Timbers anti-fascist, and should it be? Should the Timbers Army be anti-fascist? Yeah, I'm going to rewrite it as should it be because we only have time for an up or down. So everybody says yes, we should be anti-fascist. Okay, so we started with you, right, on the intros?
Am I explaining myself about the Seattle
No,
buses?
you're going to do that on the forums.
Okay. Fair enough.
Jen, give Jen the mic. Jen, real quick, we really have to hold you guys to like a minute and a half in a closing statement. Start with Jen. Yeah.
I know. It was very sudden.
Well, yeah, I just got, Gabby was like, we have a hard stop at 12:30.
That's a great impression of me. Okay. I want to say I'm really thankful to be here. This has been a really interesting experience for me. I don't have this super background of being like this super Timbers ultra supporter. So being here and like having to answer all these questions has been an incredibly educational experience for me. And I also want to say that these 4 people that I'm up here with have been like the incredibly best candidates to be up here with. Like I feel like all of us are incredible candidates and you are going to win no matter who you choose. I do want to say that one thing that I haven't got to talk a lot about, I talked a lot about this on the forums, but not so much here today, is I have a shit ton of board experience. And that is why I'm here today. I'm not here because I want to be like queen of the TA. I'm not here because I want to fix things or I see that there's all these issues. I don't have a personal agenda for being here. I'm here because I want to support the organization and what we do for its mission in the greater community, in our community, and for the team. I'm not here because I think we need to fix the flag. I'm not here because I think we have issues with RSGs. I am here because I want to support the mission of this organization and help it grow as it grows.
Okay. Maggie, thank you.
I'm letting Lexi reset it. Great. Yeah, so I think I'm going to go ahead and answer the question that is probably on one of these cards, but didn't get to, which is I've taken a lot of flack for using the term black box. And mainly what I want to say about that is every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And the fact that every single election there are questions about how do we get more people involved, how do we get more volunteers, how do we get more members, means that whatever we are doing, like the results that we have right now, that like what we're doing is getting us there. And I feel like I am coming in with experience from not directly the 107ist because I was away for a really long time. And so I have ideas and I have proposals that I've put out there and I've had to defend those a lot. I regret ever using the term black box, but it turns out it's just saying like the current way that we're doing things makes it intimidating for people to get involved. It's just not very pithy, but I think that's the problem that we have, and I think that anything that we can do, and I've thrown some ideas out there, but the more discussions we can have around it, but basically anything that we can do to try to make it less intimidating for people to get involved. Like right now we have the most proactive people involved, but we're going to have those people no matter what. So I think any way that we can kind of lower those barriers to entry, I'm not saying that we need to hand things to people, but lowering those barriers to entry so we can get more people in, I could think can only help us.
Okay, Shiva.
Everybody up here is truly very well qualified, and you will be served well no matter who you pick. I really want to serve this organization. It is an honor and a privilege, and I think you all know me, so I'm going to use my closing statement to talk about the line culture. Because I know that sounds silly. It sounds silly, but listen, you guys. The reason that we have wristbands in the first place was it was the first go-around with the front office about trying to take away some North End and making it reserved because people were complaining about people cutting in line. This is not a thing I take lightly. We have fewer wristband numbers because of construction and because the front office is running it and doing it how they're going to do it. And it's an example of one of the reasons that we have to advocate for supporters with the front office. It's not an easy thing to do in the middle of construction to figure out how they're going to handle wristbands and stuff. But when they don't do the right things with timing and with wristbands, people start to get grumpy. People start to feel like things are not fair. That's when you get this thing about random wristbands. And pretty soon, if people think it's not fair, what they want is a reserved seat. So I bring it up because it's a key issue for us in fighting for what is important. And North End general admission is key and important, and it is one of the things I'll fight for.
Thank you.
I ran for the board in 2016, got torn apart, came back and worked harder. I've learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about how to deal with people, galvanized a massive amount of volunteers, and I, startlingly enough, do not actually have an ego about it. My hard work is unimpeachable. I've had multiple romantic relationships fall apart because they question my dedication to them over the 107ist. Yeah, recently got dumped because I told the guy, yeah, Timbers Army is going to be around longer than you. So, I'm willing to fight with the front office. I'll stand up for what I believe in. I recognize that the board is made up of a bunch of different members, and I will happily work with all of them. I will listen to people. I will answer questions. I will learn from everybody. But when it comes down to it, the board needs a hard ass. I'm willing to be that hard ass. I'm not saying that the board doesn't have those people right now, but I am more than happy to play bad cop because that is how this was built. It was architected by people who knew what they wanted, would listen to people, and absolutely fought for what they thought for what they knew we need. I've been around long enough that I know what this organization needs, and I'm willing to learn from people and talk to people about what needs to happen. But I reiterate, my hard work is unimpeachable, and if I don't get elected, I'm just going to work even harder.
I think most of you know me. If you don't, I think I've laid the groundwork over the last 7 or 8 years with the amount of work that I've done. I don't take running for the board lightly. I think it's one of the most important things that we have. It kind of sets the tone, helps set the direction. I'm involved in a wide variety of areas within the 107ist. I think I have solid institutional knowledge of what's going on. I have solid understanding of what it is to be a supporter. I've shown to be trustworthy. I manage the facility at the warehouse. I'm in security. I'm the head of rigging for both supporters groups. I'm the contact for the FO for scheduling rigging and other game day operation stuff, or some of them involving TIFO anyway. And I think I've shown through my work and the people that have worked with me that I can be a leader, which I think is important. And I think I've shown I can stand up to the front office, and yeah, I think that's all I have.
All right,
I'll let my work speak for myself.
I thought we had till 12:30 to finish the forum. We have 12:30 to get the hell out of here. But I want to just say thank you for the 5 of you. I've sat up there 3 times. It is not easy. You guys did a fantastic job today.